I would like to start this video by saying that I personally believe that every couple of years you should revisit some piece of media you really enjoyed. If it's indeed that great, you'll love it even more. On the other hand, if it wasn't as good as you remember, you've at least dispelled the nostalgia, and that might change the way you generally perceive entertainment media, basically shaping your taste in some different way. Now, this isn't me spreading God-given wisdom. Book readers already know that reading certain books as an adult will invoke different feelings, especially compared to how you felt reading them as a teenager. Most of the time. My point is, it can be fun comparing how you experience the same work of art at different periods in your life. This isn't the only reason why I wanted to replay the Onimusha series. While doing some research and reading comments online, I saw that many people, even fans, consider Onimusha games to be basically Resident Evil ripoffs in some way. This is simply wrong. Even as a kid, I thought that the similarities with Resident Evil were only on the surface level. Thankfully, I got curious enough to check it out for myself. See how it holds up, to dispel my own nostalgia, if you will. I really didn't remember these games in such a way. Yeah, you can see obvious similarities and inspiration, and we will get to that in a few moments, but that's not what ripping off means. All the way back when the original Resident Evil and its sequel took off, Capcom seriously thought that the same kind of gameplay and design philosophy could be applied to everything. This style of presentation was easier for hardware to handle, so not just Capcom, but many different game developing studios were basically racing to use this survival horror template. You know, fixed camera angles, pre-rendered environments, light puzzles, tank controls, inventory management, focusing on providing a replay value, and so on. I remember playing Silent Hill and Parasite Eve way before I played my first Resi game, and my first was the third one. Capcom obviously wanted to keep that trend going, so they tried this first with Dino Crisis, and around the same time some idea guy pitched the premise of Sengoku Biohazard. It's in the name already. It boils down to, what if we use our Golden Goose template, but this time we have samurai and ninjas fighting with shurikens and swords? Since that's not Resident Evil enough, we'll add zombies and demons and it will work. The famous video game producer Keiji Inafune said yes, and that it worked. Well, there's only one thing you can say now in hindsight. Capcom, hire that man. The idea guy. I mean, hire him again, cause you probably fired him by now. Also hire Keiji Inafune back too while you're at it. He's literally going on dates offering himself so he can make video games. Now that's dedication. He's a laughingstock now, but when he was producing games at Capcom, they were still making new IPs here and there. We had both quality and quantity, while now we have occasional quality, I suppose. For those of you who don't know, Keiji Inafune is famous for making the original Mega Man. I'm sure that even if you never played it, you at least heard about it. People also remember him for saying that Japanese games were too backward in their technology and design even back in 2009. He's often blamed by fans for Capcom's Dark Age and their subsequent decline during the 7th generation of gaming. This is due to his philosophy and decision to outsource numerous IPs to Western developers who ultimately proved to be incompetent. On the other hand, he produced the most underrated video game ever, Shadow of Rome, and our beloved Onimusha series, so I guess
he was a good man.
Funny enough, after Inafune left Capcom, remarkably, every single project he was involved in was indeed quite shitty.
Oh! What? What did you just say? I'm sorry, it's true.
I guess moral of the story is having to crowdfund can only get you so far. Fact-checking all of this reveals that the idea guy behind Oni is called Yoshiki Okamoto, and he indeed left Capcom in 1997. He started his own independent video game company named Flagship, which continued to make video games for Capcom. At that time, he came up with an idea for a game inspired by spaghetti westerns, which, long story short, became Red Dead Revolver. Before he could realize that idea, Okamoto left Flagship as well in 2003 to start another independent video game company called Game Republic. It seems that he really didn't want to work for Capcom. Also, he's now 61 years old, so I guess don't hire him again. I could digress even further about how he later made his own samurai video game, but I just wanted to point out that Yoshiki Bro had two ideas worth tens of millions of dollars. That's only two ideas more than me. Anyway, according to the devs, they wanted to make the first Oni game for the PS1, but PS2 were just around the corner, so they scrapped the entire project halfway through and started developing for PS2 instead. This was not uncommon back in the day, but I like to point out that it's still commendable, especially when compared to how modern games are being developed now. Nowadays, game development is so needlessly expensive. Can you imagine what would happen if you had to start from scratch midway through? You can spell disaster right away. But back then, Onimusha, despite having its development restarted halfway through, ended up as a competently made massive hit. To be fair, it's easier when your game is only like 4 hours long, but still, despite that, it was a commercial and critical success. It got 3 sequels, 2 spin-offs, and then it ended. Not died, just ended. The industry moved on to first-person shooters and faster gameplay loops, so Capcom just allowed the series to end and shifted their focus to other stuff. Before we start with the first game in the series, a quick disclaimer. This video is not a review or an in-depth analysis of every single encounter and every area of every game in the Onimusha trilogy. I envisioned this to be a retrospective of the funny and interesting details that the series graced us with. Everyone is already familiar with everything when it comes to these games, but I still wanted to do this love letter of sorts. It's what these games deserve. They weren't just some obscure low-budget titles that became cult classics like Shadow Hearts. These were among the biggest games of its time. Onimusha Warlords is now more than 20 years old. The entire series is about to enter that threshold. Intentionally or not, Oni games are both fun and funny, and I wanted to focus on details that made them funny.
The time has come! Demons, prepare for the Dark Ceremony!
Onimusha Warlord's story is set during the Sengoku period. Rivers of blood were flowing because it was the bloodiest period of near constant civil wars. The game starts with a nice looking FMV of the famous Japanese warlord Oda Nobunaga leading his army into battle before being killed by an arrow through his neck. You see samurai fighting each other and some pretty decent fighting choreography with swords and spears. I understand the theme and why everything is black and scorched, but it still looks like they are fighting in Mordor. I feel sorry for my lord Oda. He just heard the good news of his success and before he could have his winning villain laugh, he gets shot in the neck, falling and dying instantly. After that scene, we see Princess Yuki writing a letter, presumably to our main protagonist. Our hero in this game is a brave panda called Samanosuke Akechi, who got his likeness from Takeshi Kaneshiro, a famous Japanese actor at the time. The letter says, "Samanosuke, please, something, demons, please come and save me." This letter takes forever to narrate. You would think that being in danger, you would try to be as brief as possible when calling for help with the letter. Just imagine how painful it was to get every character properly painted with a brush. What if you sneeze or your hand trembles out of fear for your life? So basically we see Princess Yuki writing a letter in that FMV and we learn its content before the game starts. FMV shows demons coming to get her and Sam racing through the castle. It's really suspenseful and well directed. Sam is too late and Yuki has already disappeared. We then see the leftovers of a letter on the ground and it cuts to Sam holding his letter, gripping it angrily. So the logical question is, if he got summoned to this castle with a letter, and we see the one on the floor, should I assume that this is a different letter? If it's some unrelated document, why don't we read it? If it's not important, why are you showing it? I know it's just there to look cinematic, but I still like to imagine that Princess Yuki was sending letters to whoever comes first. Maybe some other samurai got the same letter and was like, "Pfft, demons. Yeah, right. Not gonna waste my time on this nonsense." Seeing Princess Yuki gone, Samanosuke follows the trail and quickly finds the demons that abducted her. That was rather quick and anticlimactic. He fights them off and saves Yuki. But then the boss demon appears and almost kills Sam. He loses consciousness but ultimately ends up being saved by the spirits called Oni. Sabadosuke, take this gauntlet and use its power to kill those pesky demons called Genma. Trap their souls and stop whatever evil shit is going on. After Sam comes to his senses, you are then given, like in some Resident Evil games, a fourth wall breaking document explaining the controls and off you go. The Oni are explained to be a clan destined to fight the Genma. Unfortunately, those demons eventually defeated them. Now Oni sit and cry waiting for someone to right the wrong. Why Samanosuke though? My guess is that he was the only one in the vicinity. The interesting thing is that in this game, Oni is translated as ogres, which isn't appropriate all that much, but it's funny because the first major demon you see, the one that almost killed Sam, could be described as an ogre. You find him 20 minutes later and he's the first boss, although he looks much smaller when you finally get to fight him, compared to when you first meet him. I keep telling my girlfriend he just looks smaller from that angle. Obviously, this isn't a big deal. Before the fight starts, Genma boss tells Sam that he enjoys eating humans and since the last time you saw him he was carrying away Princess Yuki, I genuinely thought that he ate her. Which sadly isn't the case. Something like that happening right away would turn this story into something much more interesting and grim. Given how Capcom treats the undertone in its games, it certainly wouldn't be surprising. You'll understand why by the time we get to Oni 3. The story in this game is told with gameplay, environment, notes and cutscenes. These scenes are unskippable, but they are never too long. They are also spread out nicely, meaning that they are not intrusive and it doesn't feel like they interrupt you too often. There was never a moment where I was like, oh god, another movie, please, just let me play the fucking game.
Can I move? Can I play the fucking game?
Having your game story set during a certain historic romanticized era is a great way to introduce foreign players to your culture and history. In some parallel universe where a publisher would actually care about that. In fact, I think that the setting was supposed to appeal to Japanese players more than the Western audience. That being said, the story of Onimusha doesn't lean on its historical setup all that much. When I first played it 15 years ago, I knew nothing about Japanese history and I mostly still don't. But it doesn't matter for your understanding of what's going on. The game does provide all the necessary info, and if you really don't care, you might as well treat it as a fictional setting. So right after you kill the first boss, the non-ogre boss Genma,
Be quiet, monster. It is time for you to go back to the underworld.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
you meet Guildenstern. He tells you that he is the one that resurrected Nobunaga and that he also works on improving demons through experiments. I like the parallel with Resident Evil, where it's a man-made horror, while in the Onimusha series it's demons making demons out of humans with magic rituals. In this game, the demons are trying to undead Nobunaga and have him lead their army and pursue their mutual goals. What those goals are is mostly explained in the documents and journals you can find, and I like how these are written. They add to the atmosphere. Reading about disturbing events establishes a spooky mood. You read about a ritual taking place and you learn about the Genma and their hierarchy and their master, a giant snake god called Fortinbras. It's always interesting to have a character that you only get to know by reading his notes. This style of storytelling is classic survival horror stuff. What's perhaps a bit odd is that some of these documents are hidden for whatever reason, which is confusing because finding them all doesn't affect anything other than your own understanding of the plot. Now I'm sure I got my one viewer in bewildered amazement so far, banging your head like, is this guy seriously talking about story in Onimusha game? Nobody cares. Nobody cared even back then. It's not smart, deep, or even all that interesting. I don't think even I care and I'm the one talking about it. It's just there as an excuse, it's not supposed to be analyzed. The thing is, I don't think that all of them felt that way making this, at least with Onimusha Warlords. There were a lot of different people from different studios and teams involved in these games. Capcom was not only changing the development team from game to game, but they also moved people from project to project. I unironically believe that there were some developers there who took this setting and its story 100% seriously, so by talking about this we celebrate those unsung heroes. There are some genuine attempts at horror here that surprisingly work. Watching a hot woman suddenly transform into a giant insect is horrifying. So yeah, the horror undertone is there. Even the obligatory horrendous English voice acting for the time doesn't ruin it too much. It can be quite funny.
Help!
Who are you?
My name is Nui. I serve Princess Hatsu. Princess Yuki is underground. Oh!
You alright?
You can play with the original dub if you want to pretend it's actually a horror game and then change it to English if you wanna chuckle here and there. I like how the hero's name pronunciation is basically a dice roll every single time it's spoken. It feels like everyone loved saying Samanosuke as much as they could.
We meet again, Samanosuke.
Samanosuke. Samanosuke?
Samanosuke, Samanosuke, Samanosuke.
Samanosuke.
Samanosuke. Samanosuke.
Samanosuke.
Samanosuke.
Samanosuke. Samanosuke.
Samanosuke.
Samanosuke.
Samanosuke.
Samanosuke. Samanosuke.
I don't think that Tony 1 was trying to be all serious all the time, but it rarely gets to an awkward tonal dissonance that make you feel secondhand embarrassment.
It was destiny.
Samanosuke.
Sam and Nobunaga aside, there are other human characters I want to bring up for some reason. Tokichiro Hinoshita also appears in the game as the main human villain. He tries to convince Sam to join the Oda clan but offers nothing in return. How about some sexy demon virgins or a castle or anything? Give me an onigiri. Give me something. Tokichiro was Nobunaga's subordinate, so it makes sense for him to be in the game. His basic logic is that in this world the strong rule the weak. Farmers serve samurai and people serve demons. But you are only a human after all, Tokichiro. Nevertheless, I like his conviction here.
Strong will prey upon the weak. Farmers obey samurai, and humans obey demons.
Now what I wanna know is, what makes him so sure that one of the Genma won't just attack him out of confusion? Do these guys really look like they follow some code or hierarchy rule? I assume that all of the low-tier Genma are part of some hive mind for some reason because they don't really look intelligent. If they ate Hideyoshi, would Nobunaga really be like, "No man, you ate my favorite subordinate, no"? When you meet Yoshi for the first time, a narrator tells you who he is.
He is Tokichiro Kinoshita.
This man will eventually conquer the world under the name Hideyoshi Toyotomi.
They did this only with Tokichiro to emphasize that he is important, I think. And I wonder how much they paid the narrator for that one sentence. The narrator was my favorite character, so I really wish they did more with this guy. I also, honestly, wish that they did this kind of narration for every human character. Like for instance, there's also this annoying kid Yumemaru. Turns out this is actually supposed to be Keiji Maeda, who was a famous samurai of the period, known for his monstrous height and his peerless strength. Me being a man of culture, I obviously know about him from Samurai Warriors and some other Japanese games. Now why the game chooses to call him Yumemaru instead of his real name, I don't know. Later I discovered that his true identity is only revealed in Onimusha Blade Warriors, a spin-off game inspired by Smash games.
Kaede, it's me, Yumemaru.
Yumemaru? Is it really you?
I must have changed, I guess. It's been more than 10 years. But you, Kaede, you haven't changed at all. Now my name is Keijiro Maeda, which sounds grand, I suppose, but I'm just a humble wanderer. So what are you doing?
I'm investigating the link between Nobunaga and the demons. Samanosuke is doing the same.
Samanosuke?
Samanosuke?
In the manual for the first game, Yumemaru was described as an enigmatic orphan, so I guess they plan to re-include him later in the following Onimusha games one way or another. After the final boss, you get this video describing every character's fate, but they don't reveal his secret identity there either. We also have Princess Yuki, Sam's cousin and a damsel in distress.
Samanosuke.
I call her princess cause the game calls her princess, but it's more likely that the translator feared that the filthy gaijin will confuse the word maiden with something other than purity and innocence. She's the sister of Yoshitatsu Saito, the master of the Inabayama castle, the place we are at. I already talked about her calligraphy skills and she doesn't get much screen time, but the demons want to drink blood from her and Yumemaru's skulls for their ritual, which is just mean.
Man, that's just mean. That's mean, man.
Mean and completely uncalled for. And then there's Kaede, an expert female ninja who was originally sent by the Iga ninja to assassinate Samanosuke. Instead, she develops absolute trust in him and joins him as his confidant. This info from the manual is funny to me because it's meaningless and it ties into nothing within the game. But it's cool, so it doesn't matter. Hattori Hanzo isn't, but Kaede is a playable character for a few brief moments where she has to save Samanosuke. It's like they wanted to put Sam in danger but had no idea how to get him out of it. She has short, underdeveloped segments and her moveset is rigid to use. She can't collect orbs, so fighting Genma with her is just a waste of time. You can try, but she has no gauntlet powers and she swings like a girl, so it takes years to kill anything. Just run. I'd like to point out again that her interesting backstory from the manual plays no role in the plot. Unless you wanna say that her ninja training was the reason she could solve this Resident Evil puzzle and save Samanosuke. You play as her 3 times in this game. First, she saves Sam from drowning when he gets trapped in this epic drowning chamber.
Samanosuke, wait there. I will help you.
What's funny is, right before you get to control her for the second time, Sam falls into another trap. So the game switches character and you think you're going to have to rescue him again, but no! Sam actually saves himself and Kaede ends up elsewhere, almost saving Princess Yuki. The third time she finds a crucial item and she sets fire to a boathouse where Sam is fighting that sexy giant wasp, and that somehow helps him win. I'm not entirely sure how she knew this would happen. Maybe it's just Iga Ninja training. So all in all, my girl Kaede is the perfect girlfriend material. She gets things done, cosplays, is loyal to Sam, somewhat cute, and can fight off demons and solve puzzles. While it would be hilarious to listen to these voice actors express feelings to each other, thankfully there's no love story here. They're just friends. In their off time they drink sake and play Sengoku tabletop together. They do have some implied romance in Blade Warriors, but that doesn't count because that game doesn't count.
Have you been searching for me all this time?
Yes, of course. I am your shadow.
Kaede, forgive me.
Samanosuke.
So as you can tell, I grew to like Kaede. Outside her playable sections, there certainly isn't much there to hate. Her voice actually sounds like she learned English by playing localized Japanese video games.
Samanosuke, is there something you wanted to ask this young man?
But what about Samanosuke?
Samanosuke.
Sam, on the other hand, is just cool. Because he's a samurai and they're always cool. He is stoic, brave and honorable. He takes pride in serving no one.
I serve no one.
The only thing truly remarkable about him is his likeness because of the actor he was modeled after. That is, until mid-game, where unprovoked he gives this epic speech to Yumemaru about how he traveled out of Japan and was fascinated by the world he saw and people he met during his travels. The world is vast and he saw things you people wouldn't believe. So many things we do not understand, like a Mongolian looking guy in a tent playing shamisen. There are things more important than fighting over a piece of land. In fact, this game really has a strong stance against people waging wars. It's not some revolutionary position to take, but whoever wrote this part seems quite adamant on this topic. One document written by Guildenstern compares Nobunaga to Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great, branding all of them as blood-hungry animals. Reading through some interviews with Keiji Inafune, you can learn that they were interested in changing the setting for future Onimusha games. This missed opportunity made me sad and depressed, honestly. Can you imagine having Onimusha sequels set in ancient Greece or having you stop the Mongol horde? And finally, my lord Oda Nobunaga. Despite being touted as the main villain, he is barely in the game. In fact, he isn't in the game at all. I do want to point out that this was an odd case of the Mandela effect for me, cause I could have sworn he was the last boss, but no, he isn't. You don't even get to fight him. After replaying the entire trilogy again, I realized that the sequel tricked me by saying that Samanosuke won and he stopped Nobunaga at Inabayama Castle. This is not what happens at the end of Onimusha Warlords. Let's talk about the music of this game. During the opening title screen, it's hard not to notice this part stating soundtrack composed by Mamoru Samuragochi, like he's somebody really famous. At the time, he was apparently called the Digital Age Beethoven by someone, according to the wiki. Why Beethoven? Well, Mamoru was deaf for most of his life, disability certificate and all. After playing the game, the only conclusion you can make is that this guy is really great. The main theme is catchy and haunting. It's one of those games you just zone out slashing at enemies while humming the main theme. It's enchanting and unforgettable, and it elevates the entire game immensely. It was reported that the composer in question strong-armed the producers into employing 200-piece orchestra, including musicians playing traditional instruments such as Japanese flute and taiko drums. Except, not really. Apparently the entire score was written by a ghostwriter named Takeshi Nigaki, who was actually a music teacher and a composer working for Samuragochi for 18 years in secret. In 2014 he revealed this info and subsequently ended up being credited for the soundtracks of both the original Resident Evil and Onimusha Warlords. But it doesn't end there. After the allegations were made, Samuragochi owned up to it. ultimately admitting that while having some hearing impairment, it wasn't enough to be considered a disability, so he returned his disability certificate. This is amazing. It's also very chucklesome when you play Onimusha 2, which has music composed by a different dude, and you realize that the soundtrack is good but not even nearly close to the level of Samuragochi. I mean Nigaki. This might seem just like funny trivia, but it actually ties into game preservation as a topic. Game publishers don't care about the history of this industry. They re-released the game on Steam and modern hardware back in 2018 and they changed the soundtrack completely. Whether the new one is good or bad is beside the point. It should remain the same, especially when there's little to no effort on improving the game otherwise. Music was the core part of the experience, and by changing it you change the essence of the entire game. It's part of its history and legacy, no matter how controversial it is. Now, you can do without the horrible acting, but the soundtrack was already critically acclaimed. Just credit the right guy this time and leave it alone. Now, if you were the original Resident Evil dork, you knew right away that it's the guy who composed this. Am I finally going to talk about gameplay? Yes. Like I said, at first, Onimusha really looks like a Resident Evil game. From the way you interact with the scenery by inspecting it with a button, to the way you use items you find in order to progress. After you play the game some more, you realize that all those resin ingredients are really toned down and linear. You don't have a limited inventory and you don't really have routes to select on how you want to progress. What you do have are 10 controls with the D-pad. You have a quick turn button, but regardless, controlling Sam feels stiff cause that's how 10 controls are. That being said, Sam is pretty mobile thanks to the fast sidestepping and backward movement. By locking on you can strafe with ease, although you still feel like you are fighting the controls sometimes. What you do fight a lot are fixed camera angles. If the game was harder, I can see this being quite aggravating. It adds nothing to the game and it boils down to you just learning angles and placing yourself in a spot where you can see what's happening. People are really nostalgic about fixed camera angles, but replaying this, it's easy to understand why Capcom ditched this system as soon as they had the technology to do so. There are a few puzzles and minigames along the way, but nothing that would stop an intellectually challenged person from progressing. These rotating puzzles have become a recurring thing in the entire series. I like these. They add some playtime and offer variety. There are optional stones you can collect to unlock a bonus mode, selectable from the start menu. These stones are initially hidden until you press the inspect button near one accidentally. Some are given as a reward in the Dark Realm.
Won't you go to the Dark Realm? There is no guarantee you will live, but if you do, great rewards await.
The Dark Realm is in essence the Bloody Palace before there was a Bloody Palace. Every Onimusha game has it, and it's basically a place where you fight waves of enemies and practice your tactics against different groups of adversaries. It's the most challenging part of the game, if not the most interesting part of the game. They really tried to extend the main campaign in any way possible. That being said, the Dark Realm is a pretty ingenious way to do so. After you get through it, you will have enough experience to level up everything, and the final reward is an item you need to find the ultimate sword. You don't need that sword, but it makes the last boss a cakewalk. So in a way, the Dark Realm here is in theory completely optional, yet it's impossible to feel the satisfaction of completing the game if you skip it. It's also impossible to get the best ranking at the end of the game without the Dark Realm because you will never meet the required number of enemies you need to defeat. I said that this game has replay value, but the progression is more linear than you would expect from games of this type. You can miss some stuff, but your path will remain mostly the same with each playthrough. It's actually underwhelming. There's no Route B to prioritize before doing Route A, so how does that warrant replaying it again? Well, the accent this time is less on navigating the environment and more on choosing your battles and successfully killing everything in your way. And killing things in Onimusha never gets old. This is also where critical hits called Descent come into play. Remember when I said that the game shows you the fourth wall breaking tutorial document explaining the controls? Well, it neglects to explain literally the main attraction of the combat system, the Isen mechanic. It works like this. When you are about to get hit, if you block at the last possible moment and follow with a quick attack, or you press an attack button just as you're about to get hit, you perform Isen, which is basically an insta-kill on almost every enemy in the game. If you position yourself properly, you can cause collateral damage, meaning that you can cut more than one Genma in a slash. It looks sick, gives back health, and is what Onimusha became famous for. These days. But back in the day, there were many people who finished their first and maybe their only playthrough without executing this move even once, or only doing it by accident. That's because the timing is quite strict and you need to know what you are doing. You need to know which attack to wait for and you need to practice. If you miss that parry, enemies will punish you really hard. You will almost certainly die or at least lose a healing item. It's not really clear if an attack can be parried or not, meaning that when you fail to pull off Isen you are never sure if you're too slow or the attack is impossible to counter. This gets better with practice and people claim that every blockable attack can be parried, but it still feels a bit inconsistent somehow, even after replaying the game at least 6 times. If you're developing your combat system to be based on blocking and parrying, you need to make it crystal clear which attacks can be blocked and have to be avoided. Since Genma can be quite dangerous and this technique seems too unreliable to use, you will just tend to mash buttons trying to kill them before they can actually swing. Using Isen is not something you can cheat on. You need to press the buttons fast and correctly read the animations and understand the frame data. It's like it's a video game and not a hand-holding Snorfest. After completing Oni 2 on hard and now becoming a savant of the Oni series, I came back to Oni 1 to test my newly acquired skill, wondering if the mechanic is even in the game. Lo and behold, I was Isening those first enemies left and right. So I was thinking, okay, no way, Isen has to be explained in the manual if nowhere else. So let's see what the manual says. Huh, nothing on Isen, but at least I can learn how to block. There's something weird and off-putting with blocking. It's like there's delay on him putting the guard up, so I'm still not sure at which frame Sam becomes vulnerable. Okay, so blocking. Blah 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 blah. What?
Nani?
This is not what blocking means, Capcom. The only conclusion I can make after all of this is that they didn't think that the mechanic is implemented well enough, so they didn't want the player to willingly try to pull off the move and fail too often or something, ended up frustrated. I mean, you tell me. Games don't usually keep their main mechanics a secret. For comparison, Oni 2 is entirely built around Isen and you can chain it and punish the bosses too. It's why many people find Onimusha 2 to be their favorite of the series. Still not in the 4th wall breaking tutorial document, but at least it's mentioned in the manual this time. Oni 3 is a bit different, but we will get to that eventually. The Inabayama castle you explore is detailed and with every area serving some in-world purpose. However, your progression is sometimes halted not by an item you need to find, but by being required to level up your swords. I thought that this would lead to grinding and time wasting, but it's not that severe. It's a stupid design decision that is only an issue the first time around. When you are replaying the game, you obviously just level up what you need to progress first. This is also in place so you don't just run around every enemy without fighting anyone. You have a few different weapons, but they don't really change the combat that much. It boils down to slow and powerful, fast but weaker, and a balanced weapon with moderate speed and damage. It's a short game that you only truly get to appreciate after you've replayed it and you understand how to use Isen and progress quickly. And when I say short, I really mean it. 4 to 6 hours first time around, and if you want to get the best ranking possible, you need to do it under 3 hours with 600 enemies killed. It's engaging and fun, and it's not wasting your time. Nowadays, games are bloated to no end with 3 hours of fun gameplay hidden behind 40 hours of boredom. In Onimusha Warlords, you're not just mastering combat, you're also learning how to be efficient while progressing. It's like knowing how to solve the Rubik's Cube and then trying to do it faster with as few moves as possible. I will admit that the cube here isn't all that complex at all, but it's still addictive and engaging. It's the speedrunning mentality that you develop as soon as you see your rank first time finishing the game. No matter how good you play and min-max everything, you can never shake off the feeling that you could have done it even faster and more efficiently. Like I said, because it requires actual timing, positioning, precision, skill if you will, the gameplay loop never gets old. The ending is great despite living on a cliffhanger. You fight a giant snake to save both Yuki and Yumemaru. It ends with an amazing and impactful FMV where we see Samanosky transforming into Onimusha for the first time in the series. This video was jaw-dropping back in 2001 and it still is to some extent. I say that I like the ending, but it doesn't make much sense or any whatsoever, and it contradicts the point of the entire game. I say this because Samanosky interrupts the ritual, yet both the demon god Fortinbras and Nobunaga are there. I thought that the point of blood drinking ritual was to awaken Fortinbras, but there he is, being stabbed with a sword. Maybe this was his original form and he was about to ascend into something else. In the Dawn of the Dreams, he comes back and has a human form, so take that how you will. In the Western release, by completing the game, you unlock a trailer for Oni 2.
10 years have passed. A new hero arrives with the power. Onimusha lives.
Hey, we sold you this kinda short game, but, a sequel is on its way. Unless you're playing the Xbox version. Then you get nothing, cause they knew there won't be Oni 2 for Xbox anytime soon. A year after we got the original Oni 1, right before Onimusha's 2 release date on PS2, Capcom released what some might call the definitive or the special edition of Onimusha Warlords called Genma Onimusha for the original Xbox. This new version has improved graphics, adds more enemies, and remixes enemy placements. It also features additional content, new gameplay mechanics, and new cool looking costumes. The biggest gameplay differences are the ability to charge your sword up to 3 levels and the new tag for the green orb mechanic. After you attack an enemy, he might drop a floating green orb that other enemies will try to draw in and consume. You must press the button dedicated to drawing in orbs to quickly get the orb yourself. If you win this tag, you store those green orbs and after collecting 5 you can consume them to get invulnerability and healing for a couple of seconds. This is in part how the Onimusha transformation works in later games. If you fail, the one Genma that got the orb enters a berserk state where he has more health and attacks faster. It's even slightly changing its physical appearance to glow red and looks more menacing, which is really cool. Another addition to Genma Oni is the introduction of this creepy haunting doll that turns the difficulty up to 11. Don't even try to fight it, you will end up without killing items. It's pretty similar to Nemesis hunting you in Resident Evil 3 and I'm sure that everyone has already made that comparison. You can only hurt her with magic or by charging your sword and it's a pain in the ass. If you can counter her with Isen, I don't know. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end I couldn't do it, so I just ran away every time. I love her design and the genuine dread that she ends up inducing. When I played it, I wasn't aware of the increased difficulty. The game basically showers you right away with rebirth talismans and healing herbs, and I foolishly assumed that it's underestimating the player's ability to deal with berserk enemies. In actuality, the game's challenge comes from all-around changes you are not used to. It is fair to say that even for an experienced player, Genma Onimusha is a lot more challenging compared to the original PS2 game. The decision to make it harder might be the reason this special edition didn't sell well on the Xbox, and that might be the reason why, when Capcom decided to finally port the game in 2018 to Steam, Nintendo Switch and PS4, they opted for the original PlayStation 2 version. Why would you not re-release the best version of your game if you are already trying to cash in on the old fans and possibly get some new ones as well? I thought about this and it might seem sinister, but the cynic in me wouldn't be surprised if Capcom isn't even aware that this version exists. I'm being serious. These kinds of projects are often being outsourced to some cheaper third-party developer, and more you hear rumors about game developers not having the original source code of their own game, so who knows? This game was developed in-house, but that doesn't mean anything anymore. Oh man, porting this old-ass game is so bothersome and some people want to give us money, no. I personally wanted the authentic experience for this retrospective, but I still tried the Steam version and it was disappointing. The re-release has 3D controls, but the player character has no animations for them. That is to be expected, I guess, but turning around just looks awkward. Since you also have the original 10 controls, I guess you can just ignore it if it bothers you that much. Yes, it bothers me that. I'm not saying that they should have motion captured the new animations, but someone who cares wouldn't release it like this. It looks lazy. Also, whoever changed the game over screen that was just died before but now states game over is a fucking moron.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do it?
I can't enjoy the new soundtrack because I hate the fact that they changed it in the first place. But the soundtrack I can ignore. What I can't ignore is the new god-awful font. Original Onimusha used this appropriately stylish font, but it's like they couldn't find it or implement it properly in higher resolutions or something. So they just swapped it for this atrocity. It looks lazy. How expensive can it be to make the re-released entry to one of your best-selling franchises not look so generic and soulless? Widescreen and high definition are already available through emulation, but re-release also brings switching weapons on the fly. This might seem like a great addition, but it's not. Onimusha is not Devil May Cry, it doesn't rely on chaining combos, and pausing the game to switch weapons was never an issue. After all is said and done, I prefer the original and the emulated PS2 version, but I genuinely like the new content and mechanics from Genma Onimusha, and I think this version has more things going for it compared to the original, especially if you are in for a challenge. I'm probably biased, but I don't think that the Xbox game makes PS2 version obsolete, but it does offer almost a completely different experience to warrant playing both versions. So to summarize, how would I rate the first entry in this series? For me, it's a classic. To be called a classic, something has to be judged after a certain period of time as the outstanding of its kind. So I just did that. The game was incredibly fun to play and master, even more so than the first time I played it 15 years ago. In my memory it was a prototype, and it kinda is, but it actually ranks up pretty well among sequels and among other PS2 classics. Like every work of art that is born from a passion for the craft, the more you put into it, the more rewarding it gets. It's not perfect, far from it. The hitboxes are wonky at times and the camera is horrible most of the time, and you can argue that the game is too short even with the replay value. It's uncertain which attacks can be parried, and sometimes pre-rendered backgrounds are too obvious and immersion breaking. But even with all of that, combat is still very satisfying, and that's the most important thing. If they had polished Essen some more and let you fight Nobunaga, then this game would have almost been on par with its successor. They didn't know how far they could push the PS2 yet, and they proved this statement with sequels. Although it is fun to think, what if the shortcomings happened because Takeshi Kaneshiro halved the budget?
See you again, Samanosuke!